The greatest investment you'll ever make is on yourself. There is a moment in life when you suddenly realize that the thing you kept postponing was never really the thing you were too busy to do. It was your own life. Maybe you are 45, 52, 58, or somewhere beyond that. You wake up one morning, go to the bathroom, look into the mirror, and notice something you cannot explain away anymore. You feel more tired than you used to. Your body does not recover as quickly. Your back hurts. Your energy is lower. The doctor has started using words like blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar, stress, sleep, and lifestyle. And you remember all those years when you said, "I need to start taking care of myself." But there was always something more important. The job, the bills, the children, your parents, your business, your spouse, the house, other people's problems, and somewhere in the middle of taking care of everybody else, you quietly stop taking care of yourself. Perhaps it is not your health. Perhaps there is a dream you have been carrying for 15 years. A business idea, a book you wanted to write, a skill you wanted to learn, a career change you wanted to make, a place you wanted to visit, a relationship you wanted to repair, a version of yourself you promised you would become. And every year you told yourself the same thing: "I'll do it later." But later became next month. Next month became next year. And next year became maybe someday. My dear friend, there is a painful truth we do not like to discuss. You can replace money. You can replace possessions. You can recover from a bad decision. But you cannot recover yesterday. Time does not refund itself. And that is why the greatest investment you will ever make is not in the stock market. It is not in a bigger house. It is not in a more expensive car. It is not even in your bank account. The greatest investment you will ever make is in yourself. Because everything else in your life is influenced by the condition of the person you become. Your health, your relationships, your confidence, your work, your decisions, your peace, your future. And today, I want to talk about 6 truths that most people understand only after years of postponing themselves. Not 6 feel-good ideas, not 6 empty promises that everything will magically become better. 6 truths about what happens when you keep delaying the investment you should have been making in yourself all along. Let's begin with the first one, because it is the one most of us live inside of every single day without noticing it. Neglect does not stay small. It grows quietly, and then one day it presents you with a bill you never expected to pay. Think about a house for a moment. Not a metaphor yet, just an ordinary house. A small crack appears in the wall near the ceiling. It is thin, almost invisible. You notice it, you tell yourself you will call someone about it next weekend, and then the weekend arrives, and there is a birthday party, or a work deadline, or simply exhaustion, and the crack waits. A year later, the crack is a little wider. You notice it again, and again you postpone it, because the house still stands, the roof still holds, and nothing dramatic has happened. 5 years later, water begins seeping through that same wall during a heavy rain. Now it is not a crack anymore. It is a structural repair. It is expensive. It is disruptive. And when you finally call someone to look at it, they ask you a question that stings a little. How long has this been happening? That is what neglect does. It does not announce itself loudly in the beginning. It waits patiently, and it grows in silence, and then it presents its full cost all at once, as though it had been keeping records the entire time. This is exactly what happens inside a human body, inside a marriage, inside a dream, inside a bank account, and inside a mind. Consider a man in his early 50s, someone we might call Rakesh, though he could be any one of 1,000 people you already know. Rakesh has a demanding job. He wakes up early, drinks 2 cups of strong tea, skips breakfast because there is never enough time, eats a heavy lunch at his desk, and by evening, he is too drained to walk. too drained to cook something simple, and too drained to sleep on time because his mind is still replaying the day's meetings. For years, his body sends him small signals, a little more fatigue than usual, a little more difficulty climbing the stairs, a little more irritability with his children. He notices these signals the way you notice that crack in the wall. He tells himself, once this project is over, I will start walking every day. The project ends and another one begins. He tells himself, once the children finish school, I will have more time. The children finish school, and now there are college fees to worry about. There is always a reason to wait, and the frightening part is that every one of those reasons feels completely legitimate in the moment. Nobody postpones themselves because they do not care. They postpone themselves because something else in that specific week feels more urgent. But your body does not evaluate urgency the way your calendar does. It simply keeps a quiet record. And eventually, often during a routine checkup that was itself postponed for 2 years, the doctor uses a sentence that changes everything. Your numbers are a concern. Suddenly, what felt like a distant, abstract idea called taking care of yourself becomes a very immediate, very personal, very frightening reality. I think of another example, a woman named Farida, who ran a small catering business from her home kitchen. For years, she woke up before dawn to prepare meals, stood on her feet for hours at a time, and rarely sat down to eat her own food properly. She told herself this was simply the nature of the work, that rest was a luxury she could not afford while orders kept coming in. She noticed the swelling in her ankles, the stiffness in her knees, the way she winced when she climbed the stairs to her own bedroom, but she attributed all of it to normal aging, something everyone eventually deals with. It was only when a routine visit to a clinic, one her daughter insisted on scheduling, revealed early signs of joint damage that could have been managed years earlier, that Farida understood the true cost of what she had been calling just part of the work. The treatment now required was slower, more expensive, and more disruptive to her business than any small daily adjustment would ever have been. She often says now that she does not regret working hard. She regrets ignoring the small signals her body sent her for years, mistaking patience for endurance, and endurance for something sustainable. Here is the important distinction I want you to sit with. There is a difference between resting because you chose to and being forced to stop because your body finally gave out. One is recovery, the other is collapse. One you plan, the other plans you. When you rest by choice, you remain in control of your life. You decide when to slow down, how to slow down, and what to prioritize. When your body forces you to stop, through illness, through burnout, through an injury that could have been prevented, you lose that control. Suddenly your calendar is not yours anymore. Your choices are not yours anymore. Everything is dictated by recovery, by treatment, by fear. This is why taking care of yourself is not vanity. It is not indulgence. It is not selfishness. It is simply respect. Respect for the body that carries you through every single responsibility you have. Respect for the mind that makes every decision on behalf of the people who depend on you. If you do not respect that instrument, eventually it stops cooperating with you, and everyone who depends on you suffers alongside you. The same principle applies far beyond health. Neglect a marriage, one missed conversation at a time, one distracted dinner at a time, one unspoken frustration at a time, and eventually you find yourselves sitting across from each other with nothing left to say, wondering when exactly you became strangers who share an address. Neglect a friendship, one postponed phone call at a time, and eventually you realize you have not truly spoken in years. Neglect a skill you once had, and it quietly leaves you, the way muscles weaken when they are not used. None of this happened suddenly. It happened the same way that crack in the wall grew, quietly, gradually, without asking permission. So here is the practical realization I want to leave with you before we move to the next truth. You do not need to completely transform your life today. You do not need a dramatic before and after story. You simply need to stop the neglect. Start where the crack is smallest. Notice what you have been postponing and give it just a little attention today before it becomes something far more expensive to repair. Now, you may be wondering, if neglecting yourself slowly damages everything around you, does the opposite also hold true? Does investing in yourself actually improve everything else? And the answer, my dear friend, is yes, more than most people realize. Think of your life as a wheel with many spokes. Your career is a spoke. Your family is a spoke. Your finances are a spoke. Your friendships are a spoke. Your health is a spoke. But all of those spokes connect to a single center. That center is you, the version of you that wakes up every morning and carries all of it. If the center is weak, tired, unclear, and running on empty, every single spoke eventually wobbles, no matter how much effort you pour into that individual area of your life. You can work incredibly hard at your career, but if the person doing the work is exhausted and scattered, the quality eventually suffers. You can try incredibly hard to be present for your family, but if you have nothing left to give by the time you walk through the door, your presence becomes hollow, physically there, emotionally absent. This is why investing in yourself is not one investment among many. It is the investment that determines the return on every other investment you make. Ask yourself honestly, what are you doing to upgrade the person carrying everything? Not the schedule, not the to-do list, the actual human being underneath all of it. Are you reading anything that stretches your thinking? Are you learning anything new, on purpose, this year? Are you exercising, even modestly, to keep your body capable of carrying what you ask of it? Are you working on your emotional patterns, the ones that make you snap at the people you love the most when you are stressed? Are you developing your communication, your patience, your self-awareness, the quiet skills nobody applauds but everybody notices? Here is something beautiful and often forgotten. Age happens automatically. You do not have to do anything for another year to pass. It arrives whether you invite it or not. But growth is entirely different. Growth requires a decision. It requires effort. It requires humility. Nobody wakes up wiser simply because a birthday occurred. Wisdom is earned through reflection, through learning, through the willingness to look honestly at your own patterns and change them. I think of a woman named Meena, who spent almost 3 decades running a small tailoring business from a modest shop in her neighborhood. She was skilled with her hands and generous with her time, but for years she resisted anything that felt like change. She used the same old sewing machine, long after newer, faster machines became affordable. She never learned to use a phone for her orders, insisting that people should simply visit the shop. Her business slowly shrank, not because she lost her talent, but because she stopped investing in herself as a business owner. She assumed that who she already was would always be enough. It was only when her daughter gently showed her how a simple messaging app could bring in new customers, and how a small upgrade to her equipment could cut her working hours in half, that Meena realized something important. She had been so focused on serving everyone else's needs that she had never once asked what she needed to learn in order to keep serving them well. Within a year, her business was stronger than it had been in a decade, not because the market changed, but because she finally allowed herself to grow alongside it. There is a quiet kind of arithmetic at work here that most people never stop to calculate. If you improve as a communicator by even a small degree, every conversation you have for the rest of your life benefits slightly from that improvement. If you improve your patience by even a small degree, every difficult moment with your children, your spouse, or your colleagues becomes slightly easier to navigate. These small improvements do not fade after one use. They stay with you, applied again and again across thousands of future moments, which is exactly why the return on self-investment is so much larger than it first appears. This is the truth hiding inside point 2. You cannot give the best version of your work, your love, your leadership, or your presence from a version of yourself that has stopped growing. Every hour you spend developing yourself is an hour that quietly multiplies its value across every single area connected to you. But there is something that stands between most people and this kind of growth. It is not laziness, and it is not lack of ability. It is something quieter and far more common. It is postponement. And postponement has a way of becoming something much heavier if we are not careful. You may be wondering why postponement deserves its own separate conversation when we have already spoken about neglect. Here is the difference. Neglect is what happens to your body, your relationships, and your responsibilities when you stop attending to them. Postponement is what happens inside your own heart, to the dreams, the hopes, and the intentions you never got around to acting on. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from saying, "I failed." It hurts, but it also carries a strange kind of dignity, because it means you tried. You showed up, you attempted something, and it did not work out the way you hoped. That pain eventually heals, because there is closure in it. But there is a different kind of pain, quieter and longer lasting, that comes from saying, "I never tried." This pain does not have the same closure. It lingers, because there is no ending to reflect on, only an empty space where something could have been. Think about the conversations we postpone. A father who wanted to tell his son he was proud of him, but always assumed there would be another opportunity, a better moment, a calmer evening. A daughter who wanted to ask her mother about her childhood, her fears, her dreams before marriage, but kept thinking, "I'll ask her next time I visit." Then one day the parent is gone, and the questions remain permanently unanswered, not because the daughter did not care, but because "next time" quietly ran out. Think about the skills we postpone learning, the language you always wanted to speak, the instrument you always wanted to play, the certification that could have opened a new career path. Not because you were incapable, but because you told yourself, year after year, once things settle down, I'll start. My dear friend, things rarely settle down on their own. Life does not politely wait for a convenient season to hand you free time. If you are waiting for the perfect moment with nothing else competing for your attention, you may be waiting for a moment that never actually arrives. I do not say this to frighten you. I say it because awareness, even uncomfortable awareness, is the beginning of change. The purpose of naming this truth is not to make you feel guilty about the past. It is to protect your future from becoming a repeat of it. So let me ask you something important, without any judgment attached to your answer. What is something you have postponed for so long that it has quietly become part of your identity? Something you now describe as the thing I always wanted to do, rather than the thing I am doing. Maybe it is small, maybe it is enormous. It does not matter. What matters is this: today still exists. You still have today. And today is enough to take one small step, not the entire journey, just one step, toward the thing you have been postponing. I remember hearing about a man, a retired school teacher named Vinod, who spent 30 years telling his students to pursue their curiosity, to never stop asking questions, to always keep learning. Yet in his own life, he had quietly shelved a personal dream of learning to paint, something he had loved as a young man before responsibilities took over. Every year at his own birthday, he would mention it briefly to his family, almost as a joke. Maybe this is the year I finally pick up a brush again. And every year, the comment passed, and nothing changed. After retirement, when time was finally abundant, Vinod still hesitated. Not because he lacked time anymore, but because he had spent so many years identifying as someone who used to want to paint that actually beginning felt strange, almost like reintroducing himself to a version of his own life he had left behind decades earlier. It took a grandchild's simple, unfiltered question, "Why don't you just try it, Grandpa?" to finally move him. He bought a small set of watercolors, and within a few months, he was not painting masterpieces, but he was painting, and something in him had visibly softened, as though a door that had been shut for 30 years had finally been allowed to open again. His story is not dramatic. He did not become a famous artist, but he often says that the version of himself who finally picked up that brush feels more complete than the version who spent 30 years only talking about it. If it is a conversation, it could be a single phone call this week. If it is a skill, it could be 15 minutes of practice tonight. If it is a dream business, it could be a single hour spent researching what the first real step would look like. Not the whole mountain, just the first stone. This brings us to something even deeper, because knowing what to do is rarely the real obstacle. The real obstacle is often something quieter, something almost invisible, hiding underneath our resistance to change. And that obstacle is the comfort of staying exactly who we already are. There is a strange kind of safety in familiarity, even when that familiarity is no longer serving us well. We know our current struggles. We have learned to live around them. Change, even good change, introduces the unknown, and the unknown feels risky, even when staying the same is quietly costing us far more. This is the hidden danger of adulthood that nobody warns you about. As children, we are expected to be beginners at everything. Nobody laughs at a 5-year-old for not knowing how to read yet. But somewhere along the way, as adults, we absorb an unspoken rule that says we are supposed to already know things, that admitting we do not understand something is a form of weakness, especially in front of people younger than us or people who report to us. I want to tell you about a man named Suresh, who ran a small hardware shop for over 20 years. He was respected in his neighborhood, known for his knowledge of every screw, pipe and tool on his shelves. When his son suggested setting up an online presence to sell some of the products, Suresh dismissed the idea immediately. "I don't understand computers," he said. "That is for young people." For 2 years, Suresh watched newer shops in the area, often run by people half his age, quietly take away customers who now preferred to order online rather than travel across town. He felt frustrated, but he assumed the problem was simply unfair competition, not his own resistance to learning something new. It was only after a slow season, one that genuinely worried him, that Suresh finally agreed to sit with his son for 1 hour every evening and learn the basics. He felt embarrassed at first, fumbling with a keyboard, asking questions he assumed the child could answer. But something shifted in him during those weeks. He realized that being a beginner again did not diminish the respect people had for him. If anything, his willingness to learn, at his age, from his own son, earned him a new kind of respect, both from his son and from himself. 6 months later, Suresh's shop had a modest but steady stream of online orders. But more importantly, something had changed inside him. He no longer feared the discomfort of not knowing something. He had discovered that humility is not the opposite of expertise. Humility is what keeps expertise alive. This is the fourth truth. Investing in yourself often requires you to become a beginner again, in some area of your life, at an age when beginning feels uncomfortable. There is no shame in asking questions. There is no shame in learning from someone younger than you. There is no shame in admitting, "I do not know this yet, but I am willing to learn." The shame, if there is any at all, belongs only to refusing to grow simply because growth requires humility. Now, here is where the idea becomes deeply personal, because everything we have discussed so far, neglect, growth, postponement, and beginning again, eventually comes down to a single quiet question. Can you trust yourself to actually follow through? Think about how many times you have told yourself, "I'll start exercising on Monday. I'll start saving more seriously next month. I'll read more this year. I'll finally learn that skill. I'll have that difficult conversation. I'll change how I react when I'm stressed." And then Monday arrives, and something interrupts it. Next month arrives, and something urgent takes priority. The year quietly passes, and the reading list remains untouched. Here is what I want you to understand, because it is often missed. The real damage in these situations is rarely the missed workout, or the missed savings, or the missed reading session taken individually. Missing one day rarely changes your life. The real damage happens gradually, underneath the surface. Each broken promise to yourself, even a small one, slightly erodes your trust in your own word. And once that trust erodes enough, something painful happens. You stop believing your own promises before you even make them. You say, "I'll start Monday," while a quiet voice inside already knows you probably will not. That quiet, resigned doubt becomes one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, heavier than the missed goal itself, because it affects every future goal you attempt to set. Confidence, real confidence, is not simply a feeling you either have or do not have. Confidence is built the same way trust is built between two people, through a consistent pattern of kept promises. When you tell someone you will call them back, and you do, again and again, they learn to trust your word. The same principle applies to the relationship you have with yourself. This is why the practical framework I want to offer you here is deliberately small. Not because small goals are all you deserve, but because small, consistently kept promises rebuild trust far more effectively than large, ambitious promises that collapse under their own weight after a few days. Think of it like an audit you might run for anything else that matters to you, a personal investment audit, except instead of reviewing money, you are reviewing where your time, attention, and energy actually go each week. Look honestly at how many hours went toward your health, how many toward learning something new, how many toward the relationships that matter most, and how many disappeared into distractions that gave you nothing back. You do not need to judge what you find. You simply need to see it clearly, because you cannot redirect an investment you have never actually examined. Choose one small promise, something almost embarrassingly modest: 10 minutes of walking, 10 pages of reading, 20 minutes of learning something new. One genuinely healthy meal in your day, 30 minutes without unnecessary phone scrolling, one honest conversation you have been avoiding, one small, consistent financial habit, even something as simple as setting aside a fixed small amount before spending the rest. The size of the promise matters far less than the consistency of keeping it. Every single time you keep a small promise to yourself, you are not just completing a task, you are quietly telling your own mind, "My word means something," and that message, repeated enough times, becomes the foundation for larger changes later. This brings us to the final truth, the one that ties everything together and gives all of this its deeper meaning. Because you may be asking yourself a fair question right now. Is all of this self-focus, this talk of self-investment, self-growth, and self-trust simply another form of selfishness dressed up in gentler language? My dear friend, there is an important difference between selfishness and healthy self-respect, and it is worth understanding clearly. Selfishness takes from others in order to serve only yourself, often at their expense. Healthy self-investment does the opposite. It equips you to give more, not less, to the people you love, because you are giving from a place of strength rather than depletion. Think about the parent who never rests, who sacrifices every ounce of their own well-being for their children, believing this is the ultimate expression of love. On the surface, this looks selfless. But children absorb far more than the words their parents say. They absorb what their parents live. If a child grows up watching a parent who is perpetually exhausted, perpetually stressed, and perpetually neglecting their own health and dreams, the child does not simply learn that their parent loves them deeply. They also learn, quietly and without anyone intending to teach it, that this is what adulthood looks like, that love means self-erasure, that responsibility means abandoning yourself completely. Now think about a different example. A parent who, despite a demanding life, makes visible, consistent efforts to stay healthy, to keep learning, to nurture their own dreams, alongside their responsibilities. This parent is not loving their children any less. If anything, they are teaching their children something invaluable through simple example, that people can change at any age, that dreams do not have an expiration date, that responsibility and self-respect are not opposites but partners. What is your life currently teaching the people who are watching you, whether they are your children, your spouse, your younger colleagues, or your friends? Is it teaching them that growth stops at a certain age? That health can always wait until later? That dreams are only for the young? Or is it teaching them something far more hopeful? That people can begin again, that learning never truly has to stop, that taking care of yourself is not a betrayal of the people you love, but one of the deepest gifts you can offer them. When you invest in yourself, you are not stealing time from the people you love. You are becoming a stronger, calmer, wiser, healthier person for them to lean on. You are extending your ability to be present, not shortening it. I think of a couple, married for over 20 years, where the husband had spent most of that time believing that providing financially was the whole of his responsibility. He worked long hours, rarely took vacations, and quietly assumed his exhaustion was proof of his devotion. His wife, meanwhile, longed not for more money, but for more of him, his attention, his curiosity about her day, his willingness to sit and simply talk, without checking his phone every few minutes. It was only after their eldest daughter, now grown, gently told him during a family conversation that she remembered him mostly as tired and distracted throughout her childhood, that something in him shifted. He did not quit his job or dramatically change his career. He simply began investing small amounts of attention differently. A walk together after dinner, a phone left in another room during meals, a genuine question asked and genuinely listened to. He often says now that he spent 2 decades investing everything in providing for his family, without realizing that presence was the one investment they actually wanted most. So let us bring these 6 truths together now, because they were never meant to stand alone. Neglect compounds quietly until it presents an enormous bill. Investing in yourself raises the value of everything connected to you. Postponement, left unchecked, slowly becomes regret. Growth requires the humility to become a beginner again. Keeping small promises to yourself rebuilds the deepest kind of confidence there is. Investing in yourself is never truly separate from investing in the people you love, because they are watching, learning, and absorbing the example you set for them, whether you intend to teach them or not. So here is the question I want to leave with you, gently but seriously. What have you been postponing? Not a vague answer, a specific one. Is it your health? Is it a dream you buried under years of responsibility? Is it a relationship that has slowly gone quiet? Is it a skill you always meant to learn? Is it simply rest, real rest, the kind you have not allowed yourself in longer than you can remember? Choose one, just one, not everything at once. Trying to fix your entire life in a single day is exactly the kind of unrealistic promise that leads to broken trust in yourself. Choose one area that matters most to you right now. Then decide on one small action, something you can genuinely complete today, not someday, not next week, today. If it is health, perhaps it is a 10-minute walk after this. If it is a postponed dream, perhaps it is writing down the very first step required to begin it. If it is a relationship, perhaps it is a single message or a single phone call. If it is rest, perhaps it is simply going to sleep 30 minutes earlier tonight, without your phone in your hand. Tomorrow, choose again. Not a bigger action necessarily, just a consistent one. And the day after that, choose again. This is how transformation actually happens, not through one dramatic decision, but through a quiet accumulation of small, repeated investments. The same way neglect compounds negatively, self-investment compounds positively, silently, steadily, until one day you look back and barely recognize how far you have come. You cannot recover yesterday. I want to be honest with you about that, because false comfort helps no one. The years that have already passed, the conversations you did not have, the health choices you postponed, the dreams you set aside, those specific days are gone, and no amount of motivation can bring them back. But here is what remains entirely within your control. You can stop sacrificing tomorrow, the same way you sacrificed yesterday. Imagine, just for a moment, what becomes possible when you finally start investing in yourself, consistently, patiently, without waiting for the perfect circumstances that may never arrive. Imagine your body slowly regaining energy you thought was gone permanently. Imagine the quiet pride of finally starting something you have talked about for years. Imagine your relationships deepening, not because anything dramatic happened, but because you finally became fully present in them again. Imagine trusting your own word the way you trust the most reliable person you know, because that person has become you. None of this requires becoming someone entirely different. It simply requires becoming a little more consistent with the person you already are and a little more willing to show up for yourself the way you show up for everyone else. My dear friend, your health matters. Not because someone needs you to be healthy, though many people do, but because you deserve to feel strong in the body you live in every single day. Your time matters. Every hour you have already spent taking care of others has value, but the hours you have left also deserve some of that same care, directed inward for once. Your mind matters. The thoughts you think, the beliefs you carry, the patterns you repeat, they shape everything you build, and they deserve the same attention you give to everything else in your life. Your relationships matter, not only in the sense that you show up for others, but in the sense that you allow yourself to receive love, support, and connection as well, rather than only giving it. Your dreams matter, even the ones you set aside years ago, even the ones that feel embarrassingly out of reach now. A dream postponed is not automatically a dream lost, not while you are still here to act on it. Your future matters, and it is not fixed. It is still being written, one small daily decision at a time, and you are still holding the pen. And you, my dear friend, simply as a human being, apart from every role you play, every responsibility you carry, every title attached to your name, you matter. So today, do not aim for a perfect transformation. Aim for one honest decision, one small action, chosen deliberately, completed today, in the direction of the person you have been postponing becoming. Because in the end, after every job, every achievement, every possession, and every responsibility has passed through your hands, the one investment that will have shaped every single moment of your life is the quiet, patient, consistent investment you made or failed to make in yourself. The greatest investment you will ever make is on yourself, and the return on that investment is not measured only in money or success or achievement. It is measured in the quality of the life you actually get to live, in the presence you bring to the people you love, and in the peace you finally allow yourself to feel when you stop postponing your own life and finally begin living it.